Walking slowly through a parking lot is not a crime. In fact, a parking lot is exactly where people should be walking slowly. Cars are backing out. Shopping carts are appearing from impossible angles. Somebody is always reversing while looking in the wrong direction. Nobody should be trying to set a land speed record between the cart return and the garden center. So when a pedestrian steps into the lane ahead of you, you slow down. Obviously. That is not the misdemeanor. The misdemeanor begins when the pedestrian does not cross the lane. They turn into it, and then they begin traveling in the same direction as you, directly down the middle. You are no longer driving through the parking lot. You are following a person. They are walking at approximately 3 miles per hour, which means your car is now also traveling at approximately 3 miles per hour. Your vehicle may have 200 horsepower. It may be capable of interstate speeds. None of that matters anymore. Your current speed limit has been established by someone carrying a reusable shopping bag. At first, this is fine. It is a parking lot. You are patient. You leave plenty of room. You assume they will angle toward a car in a moment. They do not. They continue straight. And the problem is not really their speed. The problem is the geometry. If they walked slightly to the left, you could pass slowly on the right. If they walked slightly to the right, you could pass slowly on the left. Nobody would have to hurry. Nobody would have to interact. Everyone could continue toward their respective destinations. Instead, they have selected the precise center of the lane, not aggressively, not defiantly, just mathematically. They have somehow found the one path through the parking lot that gives them jurisdiction over the entire width of the road. So you continue behind them. Very slowly. There are technically other options. You could try to pass. You could honk. You could roll down the window and say something that would almost certainly sound much more hostile than you intend. You choose none of these, because the safest and most socially acceptable thing to do is simply crawl behind them. So now you are a motorized chaperone. You are not escorting them by choice. They did not request assistance, but the two of you are moving together through the parking lot at the exact same pace. One person walking and one person operating 4,000 pounds of machinery at the speed of a mall stroller. Eventually, you consider passing. This is harder than it sounds. Passing a pedestrian in a parking lot requires an absurd amount of social precision. You need enough lateral space to make the maneuver safe. You need to move slowly enough not to frighten them. But you cannot move so slowly that you spend 12 seconds driving directly beside them like you are conducting an interview. And they are still in the middle. So you edge slightly left. Not enough room. You drift slightly right. Also, not enough room. You return to your original position behind them. Your first passing attempt has failed. Nothing has happened, but somehow the relationship has changed. Now you have tried to leave. And they are still walking. The vehicle contains a tool designed specifically for situations in which another person needs to know you are there. The horn. Unfortunately, you cannot use it. A horn has theoretically sophisticated purposes. It can warn, it can alert, it can communicate presence. In a parking lot, 5 feet behind a pedestrian, it communicates one thing: move. You could attempt the lightest possible tap. Barely touch it. A polite little beep. Something that means, hello, just making you aware that a vehicle is behind you, and I would very much like this interaction to remain non-confrontational. There is no such beep. Every horn sounds like an accusation when it is aimed at the back of a pedestrian. So the car contains an audible warning device that etiquette has made socially unusable. You remain silent and keep following. At this point, there is still a generous explanation available. Maybe they do not know you are there. This is entirely possible. They are walking through a parking lot. They may be thinking about groceries. They may be looking for their car. They may be mentally replaying an argument from 2017. The quiet engine sound behind them may not have registered as relevant information. So you wait for acknowledgement. A glance over the shoulder would be enough. A tiny shift to one side. Anything that says, yes, I understand that a vehicle has joined this procession. Nothing. You continue following. And the longer this goes on, the stranger the arrangement becomes. You have now traveled behind this person for a distance that would be concerning in almost any other context. If you were both on foot, this would already feel suspicious. But because you are in a car and they are walking directly in the lane, everyone has agreed that this is transportation. Then, finally, they look back. Good. They see you. The problem has been solved. They turn forward again and continue walking in the exact same position. Now we have new information. Before, this might have been ignorance. Now, it is policy. They know a car is behind them. They have processed this fact. They have looked directly at you, confirmed your existence, and apparently concluded that the current arrangement is satisfactory. You are no longer waiting to be noticed. You have been noticed and denied relief. Occasionally, the pedestrian will drift slightly toward one side. A gap appears. Your entire nervous system notices. This is it. You begin moving around them slowly. Then they drift back toward the center. No. You immediately retreat. They have closed a passing lane they did not know they opened. Now your car is slightly off-center behind them, which makes the whole situation look worse. You attempted a maneuver, abandoned it, and returned to formation. The parking lot has become a low-speed geopolitical dispute. At this point, you begin focusing on the pedestrian's destination. Surely they are approaching their car. Every vehicle becomes a candidate. Maybe the blue sedan. No. The white SUV? No. They walk past it. Surely the pickup truck? Also no. You begin mentally assigning ownership to vehicles you know nothing about. Please own the silver crossover. They do not own the silver crossover. Please own literally anything in this row. They continue walking. At some point, a troubling possibility enters your mind. Maybe they did not drive here. Maybe this is just how they travel. You might be behind them until the edge of the property. Then they turn. Relief. Except you also need to turn there. So you turn. They continue ahead of you. This creates a new social problem because the interaction now resembles following. You know you are not following them. You are trying to park. But they turn again. You need to turn again. Now you have followed the same stranger through two separate parking lot turns at walking speed. From their perspective, this may be becoming unsettling. From your perspective, I am trying to find a space. This is one of the rare situations where obeying every rule and being extremely patient can make you look more suspicious. You cannot speed past them. You cannot honk. You cannot choose another route without potentially driving around an entire row of parked cars. So you remain behind them. Patiently. Which is exactly what somebody following them would also do. The shopping cart version is even stronger. Now the pedestrian is not merely occupying the center of the lane, they are pushing an object that extends their jurisdiction sideways. Sometimes they walk beside the cart rather than directly behind it. Now we have a pedestrian and a shopping cart traveling in loose formation across most of the available pavement. The cart may also be angled slightly. This is important. A straight cart is an object. An angled cart is infrastructure. You are no longer waiting behind a person. You are behind a parade float. And the cart introduces another uncertainty. They may stop suddenly. They may turn toward a vehicle with no warning. They may release the cart toward the trunk and step sideways into the exact space you were considering using to pass. So, again, you wait. This is where the social asymmetry becomes important. The pedestrian is obviously the vulnerable party. The car should yield. The driver should move slowly. The driver should leave space. All true. And because all of that is true, the pedestrian possesses enormous social protection in this interaction. You cannot object without instantly becoming the unreasonable person. Imagine trying to explain it. They were walking too slowly in a parking lot. Case dismissed. That is not even the complaint. They can walk as slowly as they want. The issue is that they have chosen the one position that converts their walking speed into your driving speed. They are not merely moving through the parking lot. They are setting policy for everyone behind them. And the delay itself is usually tiny. 15 seconds, 30 seconds, maybe a minute if this person has committed to the full scenic route. Nobody's life has been ruined. That is not the point. The irritating part is the forced participation. You did not choose to travel at walking speed. You did not choose to escort this person to whichever vehicle they eventually claim. You cannot pass safely. You cannot communicate without sounding aggressive. You cannot disengage without rerouting through the parking lot. For this brief period, another person's casual position on the pavement has become your traffic control system. And they may have no idea. That is the beautiful part. They are just walking. You are managing a transportation problem. There are obviously reasonable exceptions. A person may be avoiding a reversing vehicle. They may be moving around a cart return. They may be walking with children. They may have a mobility need. They may be carrying something awkward. The parking lot may be badly designed. They may simply be crossing toward their car. All fine. The misdemeanor is not pedestrian exists where driver would prefer empty pavement. Pedestrians belong in parking lots. Drivers yield. That part is easy. The misdemeanor is the leisurely, sustained, dead center walk down the lane when there is perfectly usable space to one side and a car has been trailing behind at walking speed long enough for the two of you to develop a shared history. At some point, awareness should matter. If you glance back and discover a car behind you, you do not need to sprint. You do not need to leap onto a curb. You do not need to apologize. Just choose a side. A reasonable parking lot policy would be simple. Cars. Drive slowly. Yield to pedestrians. Leave space. Do not use a 2-ton vehicle to express impatience. Pedestrians. If you are traveling along the lane rather than crossing it, leave enough room for slow traffic to pass when reasonably possible. That is the entire treaty. Nobody has to hurry. Nobody has to surrender the parking lot. We are simply acknowledging that the lane is a shared piece of infrastructure rather than a very long sidewalk with parking spaces attached. Because there is something uniquely strange about being trapped behind a pedestrian in a car. The pedestrian may feel like the car is pressuring them. The driver may feel like the pedestrian is blocking them. Neither person necessarily intends either thing. They are just stuck inside incompatible interpretations of the same 12 feet of asphalt. One person thinks, I am walking to my car. The other thinks, I am also trying to get to a car. And the entire conflict could usually be resolved by moving approximately 3 feet to the left. That is what makes this a petty misdemeanor. No confrontation, no real harm, no meaningful delay, just one person casually occupying the exact location that creates the maximum amount of administration for everyone else. The charge: walking slowly down the exact center of a parking lot lane while a car trails behind you with no socially acceptable way to pass. The defense: it's a parking lot, they can wait. The verdict: technically correct, geometrically inconsiderate. The driver is not asking you to hurry. They are not asking you to disappear. They would simply like access to one side of the road. You are walking to your car, they are driving to theirs. And somehow, for the last 30 seconds, you have been traveling together.